What I'm going to do is just touch on some of the ethical and legal issues that's associated with accessing data with a focus on biobanks. I'm going to just kind of touch on some of the issues with biobanks and then how it relates to AI, with a particular focus on medical AI, because biobanks have medical data. Okay, so when we're thinking about medical AI, what we need is lots and lots and lots of data. And ideally, you want global data sets because, to offset issues related to bias. But this data comes from humans. It's going to come from all of us. And all of us have human rights and interests that are impacted when people and organizations and businesses are trying to access the data. Can you think of any of our rights that are invoked when a company is looking to access your data? Anyone? Yeah, privacy, data protection. Anything else? What about our right to autonomy, our right to decide over what will be done and how our data will be used? Some people, if you think of the empirical work that's done on people's attitudes toward accessing data, everyone has different attitudes. Some people are like, go, take it. Others are like, I don't want Google or a company to have my data. So we all have rights and interests in accessing the data that are impacted. So where do we get the data? Well, biobanks, which is, as you all know, a large collection of samples and data, are one possible way to get the data. They have a lot of baseline data on healthy populations. And increasingly, they can be linked with your medical records. So it's having up-to-date data. That is important when we are developing AI. What's also important is that when we have this data in a biobank, participants will have given consent to their use for certain purposes. So there may be specific consent, generally not what is done. Most commonly, they're kind of on what we call broad consent. A participant has broadly consented to the use of their data for research for certain diseases or for research generally. We have the UK Biobank as one example. Concerns with this? Yeah.
Is the registration to the catalog an obligation for
biobanks? Yeah, and it's not just for biobanks. It's anybody whose data, anybody who has electronic health records.
Okay. So, for example,
data.
A biobank that gets a broad consent, but and the consent form.
Yeah.
It's an example from a
biobank.
It doesn't mention about this.
Yeah, and this is true.
So
yeah.
This is,
So you're going to have to share data outside of the consent that's been provided, and this is something that we've raised. So we have very clear. We've I think 4 conditions or 4 broad areas of research in CRIS where we have said that we're going to get access or use their data for. But we may now, and we're a basic research biobank, so we can't even share data for applied research. But we may now get an application. We could, in theory, be obliged to share data beyond the consent. And what that impact that's going to have on our very strong relationship with our participants, it remains to be seen. I think you want me to stop, do you?
I have one more thing to say.
Yeah.
In regards to human rights, in right to privacy,
yeah.
I think this is a conflict there.
It does consider data protection. So it does consider data protection, and what I don't like about the European Health Data Space, well, there's many things I don't like, but one of the things I don't like with the European Health Data Space is that it kind of makes this implicit assumption that re-identification and data protection are the only concerns in the reuse of data, when they're a concern, but there are many, many other concerns. I just don't, we all have personal decisions and preferences in how our data be used, and the current system and proposal is not going to change that. If we adopted a more dynamic infrastructure, and the thing is, the Commission is at a time when it's going to change, things need to change, that we know, and has a real opportunity to change it in a good way. But it's kind of like a lazy approach, just to it. It's not really thinking about how can we change. They're building infrastructures. So why not have an infrastructure where we can kind of select and choose and update? Now, we as, the subjects of using our data will have responsibilities, of course, in that system. We will, if they had a more dynamic infrastructure, responsibility to keep our information up to date so that we would actually engage with the system. But if they're going to do it, then do it right now rather than, because this is a system where we're going to be stuck with for the foreseeable future.